Welcome to the Lend Me Your Ears podcast, where we explore practical, real-world solutions to everyday sales challenges. Today's episode is inspired by a piece from lendmeyourears.co.ke titled Abductions, Extrajudicial Killings, and Fighting an Idea Whose Time Has Come. It opens with a line linked to J. Paul Getty. In times of rapid change, experience could be your worst enemy. And if you've ever watched leadership stick to a familiar script while the environment changes around them, you're going to spot the pattern fast.
That line is a warning label. Experience is usually what people lean on when they want to look steady. But sometimes it's the very thing that slows you down.
Exactly. Experience is supposed to be the advantage, the badge, the proof. But in a fast-moving world, it can turn into something else.
A blind spot.
Or an anchor.
Heavy, quiet. And then one day you realize you're not calm, you're stuck.
And Kenya's political moment, especially the Gen Z protests, makes that tension impossible to ignore.
Before we jump in, let's set the table. Because people keep trying to reduce this to young people are angry, and it's bigger than that.
Much bigger. Gen Z, born between the late 1990s and early 2010s, are leveraging digital tools and grassroots organizing to drive change.
And the demographic reality matters here. A United Nations study is cited saying 75% of Kenya's population is under 35, and that group is increasingly disillusioned with the old guard's approach to governance.
3/4 of the country. So when leaders talk like this is a small disturbance, they're not just misreading a protest, they're misreading the country.
Okay, let's walk through the three patterns.
Pattern 1. Denial born of complacency.
The comfortable kind. The kind that sounds reasonable. It's been working for decades, it'll work now.
Exactly. Why fix it? Ignore the neon lights screaming for change, they'll flicker out.
Neon lights don't flicker out because you refuse to look at them. They usually get brighter because you cannot stop an idea whose time has come, especially when it resonates with the lived struggles of a majority of citizens.
Complacency anchors you to the past. It makes you loyal to methods that used to work even when the environment has shifted.
And the business example used here is clean. Nokia.
In 2007, Nokia was the leading mobile phone company in the world, with 1 billion customers.
1 billion? That's not a lead, that's domination.
Right? And yet, the world wasn't falling in love with the hardware, a rectangle with a screen. People cared about evolving interactive software, the ecosystem, the experience.
Then, the iPhone and Android show up and the center of gravity moves.
Nokia missed that shift and never recovered. That's the point. Experience can make you excellent at yesterday's game while you fail to notice the rules have changed.
So translate that into politics, because this is where it stops being a business story and starts feeling like a live situation.
Gen Z wields power through social media and grassroots organizing. They know the old ways of campaigning, endless rallies and patronage networks can fall flat in a digitally connected world.
And it's not even an insult, it's just reality. People don't need to be in the same stadium to be in the same movement.
Which is why that Jeff Bezos line lands. We co-evolve with our tools. We change our tools and our tools change us.
Tools reshape expectations. Speed, coordination, accountability. And leaders either evolve with that or they don't.
And the added point is blunt. The legacy Kenyan politician has seemingly not evolved with evolving digital tools.
So pattern 1 is leaders treating a new environment like it's the old environment, then acting surprised when the old playbook stops working.
Exactly. Now pattern 2. Goliath did see David coming, he just ignored him.
I love that framing because it removes the excuse of ignorance. This is arrogance. This is, I see you and I'm not impressed.
And the local examples make it hard to argue with. About 30 years ago, Safaricom was a small department inside a larger telcom and nobody really paid attention.
Telcom's posture was basically, we are Telcom, the only phone services provider in Kenya.
Then the switch to digital loomed and giant media houses, still running analog signals, believed they were too big to fail.
We can't be switched off. What will Kenyans watch? And that confidence sounds ridiculous now, but back then it felt untouchable.
And then they got switched off.
Reality is rude like that. It doesn't negotiate with your self-image.
Today, Telkom is described as a shadow of its former self. Safaricom leads East Africa in market valuation, said to comprise 40% of the Nairobi Securities Exchange. And many media houses are still struggling because they boarded the digital train several stations too late.
So the lesson is, David wasn't invisible. David was small and easy to dismiss. That's exactly why Goliath missed the pebble.
Now apply that to the protests. The unrest is framed as a Gen Z problem. They are our children is the posture.
That language shrinks a national outcry into a parenting issue, like it's a phase you can wait out.
And the initial reaction was dismissive. MP Kimani Ichung'wah called it posh politics, saying these are middle-class children in Nairobi who don't understand rural Kenyans for whom the finance bill is supposed to help.
And then comes that stereotype line designed to stick. People who arrive in an Uber holding an iPhone and stop at KFC to eat minofu. It's packaged like a joke, but it's doing something serious.
It turns citizens into a caricature. And once you've reduced people to a meme, you don't have to listen to them anymore.
Exactly. You stop hearing the signal.
Meanwhile, the signal is getting louder.
Then reality answered. And it answered fast.
A week later, on June 25th, protests erupted. They were mobilized almost entirely through social media, powered by the hashtag #TotalShutdownKE.
Total Shutdown KE.
They erupted across 37 of the country's 47 counties and culminated in the breaching of parliament.
That is not posh politics. That's a nationwide alarm.
The estimate given is that 1 million Kenyans took to the streets. Even far-flung counties like Turkana and Samburu stood up to be counted.
So this is just a Nairobi bubble story collapses immediately. It collapses under its own laziness.
Which brings the David and Goliath framing into focus. Goliath dismissed and ridiculed David and never saw the pebble coming.
And then the argument sharpens. The problem is not our children. The problem is wider than that.
Right. The problem is Gen Z and millennials, and it's their parents, Gen X and baby boomer grandparents, who have suffered in silence for decades and are only too happy to support their self-declared fearless and tribeless children and grandchildren.
Meaning what looks like a youth wave is also a generational coalition. That's why it felt different.
And the punitive Finance Bill 2024 is framed as the powder keg that ignited the revolution.
The spark, not the whole fire.
Because underneath it is a wider exhaustion, enough of an increasingly oppressive tax regime squeezing an already suffocating standard of living, enough of corruption, indifference, and insensitivity.
Enough of leadership flaunting excesses while people feel like they're being taxed into a corner. That kind of pressure doesn't disappear. It builds.
So, pattern 2 is the giant sees the small challenger, shrugs, and then acts shocked when the small challenger turns out to be the headline. Like the headline was supposed to ask permission.
Which brings us to pattern 3. And this one ties everything together.
The perils of clinging to experience.
The moment experience stops being wisdom and becomes a trap.
There's a quote from Vidya Munigan in a TED Talk. Having experience means you are an expert of the past.
That line hits because it doesn't insult experience. It just locates it. Past.
And when change is slow, being an expert of the past is useful. You can predict, you can plan, you can apply patterns that still hold.
But when change accelerates, those patterns expire faster. And experience becomes a liability when you keep reaching for yesterday's tools to solve today's problem.
That's why experience can provide valuable insights and still become a barrier to innovation in times of rapid change. Globally, industries and political landscapes are reshaped by people willing to challenge conventional wisdom.
So politicians who rely solely on past experience risk losing touch with today's realities, missing the aspirations of a younger generation, and sliding into obsolescence.
And then comes the old playbook.
The list is heavy, but the point is mismatch. Tactics that once controlled outcomes don't work the same way in a fast-changing environment.
The list includes abductions, cosmetic changes of cabinet, delaying tactics disguised as commissions of inquiry or task forces, bribery, unending and blatant lying, hiring goons to cause chaos and justify excessive force, muzzling the press, shutting down the internet, self-serving fundraisers, political assassinations, extending constitutionally set term limits to stay in power longer, extrajudicial killings to silence dissent. It's a long list, and that's part of the point.
The argument is those tactics worked in the past in the sense that they controlled outcomes, but they're ill-suited now, especially with a population that is no longer willing to be played.
And a striking example of why they're ill-suited is the rise of digital activism and peaceful demonstrations.
Traditional politicians may struggle to grasp the full impact of social media campaigns, online movements, and organized peaceful protests.
In contrast, Gen Z, described as tribeless, partyless, and leaderless, leverages these platforms effortlessly to mobilize support and bring attention to critical issues.
That leaderless detail matters more than people think. Like, the old playbook loves a single negotiator, one person you can pressure, distract, or co-opt.
Exactly. If there's one leader, you can cut a deal, claim the movement has been handled, and move on.
But if it's decentralized, there's no single door to knock on, no single switch to flip.
Which makes the central idea crystal clear. If your experience taught you that control comes from controlling a few nodes, you struggle when the system becomes a network. And networks don't behave like old hierarchies.
You can't intimidate a network the way you intimidate a person.
And you can't bargain with the tide.
Now, here's the part that makes this feel even more current. Even after 2024, the push didn't just evaporate.
In June 2025, people again took to the streets around the anniversary of the 2024 demonstrations, and the reporting described a tense atmosphere, heavy policing, and renewed public anger that wasn't only about one bill.
And human rights reporting in 2025 also kept raising alarms about accountability in civic space, which means that this will blow over instinct can become its own kind of denial.
There's also a digital layer that fits the tools theme perfectly. Amnesty's 2025 reporting described authorities using social media and other digital tactics to suppress Gen Z-led protests and intimidate young activists. That's the tools conversation, but in a darker key.
So the conclusion lands on a crossroads. Kenya stands at a crossroads of a transformative era, driven by the dynamism of its youth. This isn't just a generational change, it's a generational shift in priorities, values, and the methods used to drive change.
A generation empowered by technology and global interconnectedness, rejecting stale politics and demanding transparency, accountability, and inclusivity.
And challenges like peaceful demonstrations, abductions, and extrajudicial killings demand more than seasoned judgment. They require fresh perspectives and innovative solutions.
Yet the familiar response remains: this wind will blow over soon. And that posture keeps showing up in different outfits.
And then the predictable cycle, rejecting a bill under pressure only to sneak it back in, dialogues, commissions, forums, reshuffles, motion that looks like change without the mindset shift that makes change real.
A lot of movement. Not always a lot of transformation.
Which is why that opening line keeps coming back. In times of rapid change, experience can be a leader's worst enemy.
Not because experience is bad, but because experience can turn rigid.
And when it turns rigid, it doesn't guide you.
It drags you.
So, we'll leave it with the simplest question.
What do you think?
Thanks for joining us on the Lend Me Your Ears podcast. If you enjoyed this conversation, subscribe and stay tuned. More field-tested insights are coming your way.
Thank you for lending us your ears. Until next time, stay informed, stay curious, and as always, keep questioning the status quo.